Hello and welcome back to Paranormal NL Podcast in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. That's PNL Podcast for short. I'm your host and founder, Jen Noseworthy. Thank you for tuning in to UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 FM on that Gulf. Now, for tonight's Canadian Thanksgiving special, First Nations Superstitions on UPRN PNL segment number 49. I've got a First Nations guest tonight waiting backstage from Minnesota, who I'll bring on shortly. Now it's time to grab your favorite beverage, a few munchies, and get ready for the show tonight. Paranormal NL Podcast is sponsored by the BOG team. It's a boots on the ground BOG team doing historical paranormal investigations in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. BOG team music heard in the PNL Podcast intro and exit is available for download on all social media and music streaming platforms. PNL Podcast believes in supporting international paranormal networking and highlighting global paranormal people, places, and things. You can follow PNL Podcast and the BOG team on all their socials and Linktree at Paranormal NL Podcast. Check out their merch and smash that subscribe button. Now, in honor of tonight's guest, I'd like to perform a land acknowledgement from First Light in the traditional language of the Newfoundland and Labrador people of Canada, where I reside. And I will provide the translation into English. Let me go ahead and pull it up so you can listen to it. Just give me 1 second. I hope everybody's having a great Thanksgiving while I'm pulling this up on the screen. Paranormal NL Podcast is sponsored again by the BOG team. It's a boots on the ground BOG team doing local historical investigations in Newfoundland and Labrador. And you're listening in on UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM. Now here we go with the First Light land acknowledgement. St. John's is home to a rich, diverse, and vibrant urban indigenous community. Located on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Beothuk. The lands and waters in and around the city have traditionally served as a gathering place for Mi'kmaq. The broader region of Newfoundland and Labrador continues to be home to diverse indigenous peoples, including First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. We honor and pay respect to the past, present, and future caretakers of these territories. I say this 3 times. We honor and pay respect to the past, present, and future caretakers of these territories. We honor and pay respect to the future, past, present caretakers of these territories. Thank you for that land acknowledgement. Now I'm going to bring on the stage our guest tonight. We have all the way from Minnesota, Nese, aka Kevin Shores, First Nations. Welcome, Nese.
Hello and hi, Jen. If I may first introduce myself in the language of my people.
Please do.
My people in the language, we say Aanishanaabeg. Originally, the classification was Algonquian language classification. The French called us Ojibwe, and the English called us Chippewa. So, Bonjour, Anin, Nese Indigenikas Aanishanaabeg, Kevin Shore's Indigenika Jaganashi Mug. Makwa Nindunde Minawa Nindogichida. Aki Minawa Gawa Babi Gani Kagan Dunjiba Minawa Minnesota Nunguminde. Chimi Gwichkichi Manadu Gani Kana. Pegish Minobima Diziwe Rian. So if I could just share what that meant.
Yes, please.
This is a protocol or a standard of introducing yourself when you meet someone. So I
Okay.
said bonjour, not bonjour like some
I was going to say it
French
sounded a little
speaking,
French, yeah.
but it's bonjour, and it's
Bonjour.
reference to the great teachers. Some claim it was Nana Bonjour or Wenabouju, but they were brothers that showed the whole dichotomy of hot and cold and up and down, where one liked it one way and one liked it the other way. And are the teachers there to teach you? So you would say, Bonjour, like, are you here to teach me? And then I said, Anin, which is just informal hi. And then I said,
Honey.
Anin, yeah. And then that Nese, that is my Anishinaabe nickname. So in the
Okay.
Anishinaabe language, I say Nese, where I do not give out my full name because that is my power. And so you don't want to.
Okay. I was going to ask you about that. What does your name mean in Anishinaabe?
Well, I was told by my Niawe, my namesake, that the meaning of my name or the definition was maker of great noise like the thunder or the thunder beings.
Okay. Is that why we have the Thunderbird up here?
Well, that is something I've always, since I was a very young child in elementary school, I was consistently consuming every book I could about my ancestors. And in first grade, I found this image in a book and I was fascinated with it. And I said, when I ever get a tattoo, or if I ever get a tattoo, that's going to be it.
That's going to be the one. And did you
And
get one?
absolutely, 26 years later, I ended
Okay.
up getting that tattoo.
Now, can I also say thank you for your service? I know that during the intro, you didn't mention your service.
Well, I did when I said Nindogichi Da.
Ah,
That
okay.
means I am a defender. I am not a big fan of the word warrior because to be a warrior, that means you go to war, and that's more on the attack. Where I was taught, you defend. You don't
Okay.
attack, you defend.
Defend.
And so then,
Interesting.
as a disabled veteran, in that whole defending of the people. So, yes, I am a veteran of the United States Navy. Then, in the
Thank you for
introduction,
your service for defending in the Navy.
I appreciate that. And then I also say
And you were going
Nindundane.
to say something else.
Yes, when I said Nindundame Makwa, that means my clan is the Bear Clan. And this is something that is passed down through your mother's lineage. And then I mentioned I am from Aki, Mother Earth, and the reservation that I'm enrolled in is Gawababi Ganikog of northern Minnesota. And I also live in a small town that's near the reservation. And then I gave an acknowledgement to all of the entities that are out there and to the creator, Gitchamanadu, and then a little short little hoping that we all will get the life that we deserve. And that's the protocol of the acknowledgement. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share about my culture and also to have this conversation. Miigwech. Thank you. So basically, in the introduction, I introduced myself as Nese, my Anishinaabe nickname, Kevin, my American English name, the clan that I'm in, which is the Bear Clan, that I am a veteran, Nindogitchida. The reservation that I'm enrolled, Gawa Babiganikog, and I live in a little town right near the reservation in northern Minnesota. And I acknowledged all the entities here and the creator and said, let's go. Let's bring it on. So thank you again, Jen.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show tonight, Kevin. And what would you like to talk about? I know we had talked about some things such as First Nation superstitions. We want to try to keep it paranormal. Um, do you have any superstitions that you'd like to share in relation to First Nations?
Well, I think when I use the word superstition, I think that goes into also with semantics, what I call phantasmagorical. Because even though I was raised in the public school system, being taught scientific deduction and trying to figure things out through the experiences I've had as an Anishinaabe person, I can't explain some of the occurrences I've had. I was fortunate being a concrete Indian, as Columbus called us. I lived in the cities, and my mother was never dismissive about the strange or the supernatural or the paranormal. My father, being of English descent, was more about that ideology in the UK where no, it's all in your head, and that didn't happen. So I kind of had a little bit of both worlds. And then as I continue on through the rituals and the ceremonies of my ancestors, the bizarre or the supernatural or the paranormal has happened throughout my life.
Did you want to share some of those experiences that you've had with the paranormal throughout your life?
Um, well, interesting enough, on several occasions, I should not be here. So I've had many near-death experiences throughout my life, and in the end, I survived from falling from the ceiling of a gymnasium
Oh my
to
goodness.
falling through the ice to being ran over by an 80,000-pound garbage truck in 2000. So,
Wow. Oh my
so for
goodness.
so for whatever reason, I'm still here. And then there's been the occurrences of strange experiences where some may, within the vernacular, say ghost or spirits have, I don't know, possibly. That's the biggest thing. I'm okay with saying I don't know, but by some of the words that are used to describe it, some may say ghost, you know, or again, the paranormal. My
Do you
my
think that after they say you had those experiences, a lot of people who I talk to say that, they have more paranormal experiences after they've had near death experiences in their life?
uh, Well, from my recollection from a young child, the occurrences have happened. So as far as like in my younger days, everything was all copacetic, enjoying life as a little American kid, but still the strangeness occurred. Yet at that age, I didn't understand it.
Okay. So, what other different experiences have you had?
Well, my favorite one is well, let me digress a little bit. So in the military, because of my service, I'm a disabled veteran. I'm
Thank you
confined.
again for your service.
Oh, appreciate that. So I'm confined to a wheelchair and I'm blind at this time. So when I started to get sick back in the 1990, when I started showing signs of being sick, because of my upbringing being raised Lutheran, I at one point said I'd no longer want to be involved with church or this ideology. I always believed in the higher power, but
Right.
it didn't make sense to me. And so when I became sick, like most people do, they question what's the existence beyond this. So I got involved with my native heritage and started doing the rituals and ceremonies. And this is where it started getting exciting, because the moment I went to a sweat lodge, which is a purification ritual, and it has many implications with it too. From the first time when I crawled into the sweat lodge and experienced that, I knew where I belonged. And one time during this experience, off the back left of my shoulder, I felt this heavy breathing and almost somewhat like a low growl. And
Oh,
I'm like, there's no way nothing can be behind me, because the little wigwam that you do the sweat lodge in is a little dome on the ground, and I
right.
was up against the wall.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of blowing this off and just going through the experience. After the lodge was over, they have a feast where we would eat. And sometimes the elder that performed the lodge would have discussion. And this elder at this time asked me, he said, "Did you recognize the bear behind you?"
Mm.
And I just, like, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and that shiver down my spine, because I'm like, yes, that's what it felt like, the presence of a bear. And then
Well,
he said, "You're Bear Clan, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am."
okay. Well, that's interesting.
And
That
so, yeah, absolutely.
Now you
And
had
so,
mentioned some foods, and since we're talking about Thanksgiving, what kind of food would y'all have?
well, usually since it was Americanized, it was just, what people brought, kind of like a smorgasbord
Okay.
where
Yeah.
everybody would prepare. But as far as traditional foods, I will uh, always appreciate wild rice, which
Wild
I
rice, my
which I
favorite. Mm.
practically eat every day. So that is my favorite. I'm a huge fan of bison. And
Okay. I've
I,
never tried bison. I've had moose, but not bison.
oh yes, moose
Caribou.
is delicious.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, now you're gonna start getting me hungry.
Rabbit, seal.
But yeah, so we
I think you
and
dropped a little bit there, Nase. You want to just repeat
oh,
that? We were talking about different foods, and your call dropped. I think you're on a cell phone. That could be part of it.
are you able to hear me again? Sorry about that.
Yep, yep, I can hear you
Did it
now.
again. So yeah, so during these ceremonies and rituals, people would gather, and we have certain times when we have these rituals and ceremonies. Some of them are accordance to the moon calendar, the full moon or the new moon.
Okay.
Also on the equinox and the solstice. There's
Yes, because you wanted to record the show around the full moon, correct?
the new moon, which
The new
is
moon, yes, because this show is pre-recorded. So this is a new moon.
absolutely, and so to me, it gives it a little bit more oomph when you synchronize with the greater cycles. Through my experience, the the bizarre, or the ability to tap in, for lack of a better term, I think is more successful. And the universe will give you the answers, but a lot of people are so distracted and bombarded by stimuli that they don't look for those answers. And I think when you do rituals and ceremonies in accordance with the greater cycles, i.e., the moon and the sun and their conjunctions, then that some people call it the veil of perception is is better.
Yes,
Oh,
it gets thinner.
yes, for
Yes, definitely easier. Now, I think you were going to talk a little bit about what some paranormal things that happened to you when you were younger. I think there was something about a pond.
oh yeah. Well, actually, this goes into the UFO, I guess, category, um, which was always interesting too, because when I when I really got involved with my heritage, I've always been a kid raised on In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. I
Okay.
would I would ask elders, what about UFOs? What about extraterrestrials? And I don't recall ever an elder being dismissive. They would be like, what about them? And so then they would get the questions that I would present.
Now, I have a question, like for Anishinaabe, do you consider them sky people?
Well, there's three different stories that I tend to find when questioning where we came from. One of them is we've been here since the beginning, that we've always been part of the earth. The other one is that we were brought here from somewhere else. And the third one is that we are the descendants of the Atlanteans when Atlantis went under. All of them are incredible in itself. Unfortunately, the difference between his story and history, things get muddled in history. So it's hard to decipher what is between the lines. And since we've lost a lot of our birch bark scroll interpreters and our great copper scrolls that have been taken from us in the earlier days of the invasion of North America, so there's
So that's how
discrepancies.
you documented things on birch and copper?
Well, yeah, there would be these great copper scrolls, which were just like big round circles.
Okay.
And on this would be etched symbols like iconography or hieroglyphics or pictographs or the such. And so then, because of the big copper scrolls were difficult to transfer, then there's a process of where you can take birch bark and you get it wet and it will lay out flat. And then you would etch these symbols into it, thus passing on the teaching, which was usually oral. And so
Okay.
then when the birch bark would dry up, it would naturally curl or roll up on itself, and it was called the birch bark scrolls. And this is what the historians usually had, were all of these birch bark scrolls to share the history and all of the information necessary to go through existence.
Were they stored in a special place?
Um, Usually they were kept by the historian. We have a
When you say
wonderful,
historian, do you mean the elders?
well, so as you went through your existence within the tribe, there are many different positions or spokes, which I like to use the metaphor of a bike wheel. So when you went through your puberty rites called a vision quest, then that experience of 4 days of fasting, sitting by yourself and calculating who you are, then you would come up with an idea of, well, I'd like to be a, a bow maker, or I'd like to make buckskin coats, or I'd like to go hunting, or I'd like to be a farmer, or whatever. And then you would share this with your parents, and then elders would be sought out to assist you in accomplishing what you want to be. Just like the idea of a protege or an attendant to a craftsman.
Okay.
So then,
Interesting.
if a tribal historian saw a child or met a child that was very good at retaining information, were very good as far as sharing with individuals, then they would be more likely to gravitate and say, hey, I think you'd be a good historian. And so then it would be passed on that way. It's, once you find the child's strength or gift, then you try to help that child. With great skill, you need practice for the skill to become better. And so when these attributes were found, then they were pushed to go for it. Follow your aspirations, follow your dreams, and participate as a spoke to the people. Because for each of those spokes in the wheel when they are fine-tuned and they're at their optimal perfection, then the wheel will roll in accordance.
Okay, well, that makes perfect sense for sure. So, getting back to your story that you were going to tell when you were a child about the pond, do you want to talk about that?
Yes. So as a child, where I grew up, there was a hill that you went up the hill, and over the hill was a cul-de-sac, and no cars could get into the cul-de-sac. So all of us kids in the neighborhood would play in the cul-de-sac. And the rule was when the street lights came on, everybody had to head home. Well, it was getting close to that time of dusk. And then all of a sudden, one of the girls that were there started screaming and was facing the pond that was down the hill about 200, maybe 300 yards away from the cul-de-sac across the field. And then all of a sudden, all of us kids are screaming and we're running from the cul-de-sac. So then, when all of the stories were compared, all the children had different stories. My
Okay,
story was that I saw something coming from the surface of the water and breaching the surface like a whale, when a whale will breach the surface.
right.
And I thought it was something scary like a monster. And it was so devastating. For the following nights, my parents would have to walk me up to the top of the hill and show me the pond, that everything was fine and everything was safe. So fast forward in time, when I could see, the remake of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory came out with Johnny Depp, that one. And within it, they had this scene where they showed UFOs dropping a tube into the chocolate river and sucking up the chocolate. So when that image hit me, all of a sudden I get this intense feeling and like a flashback that what I thought I saw was actually feasibly a craft that was hovering over the pond and sucking up water.
Wow. Like a
Interesting enough,
okay. Yeah, because
interesting enough,
that's
and
another theory that the UFOs suck up water, right? And what were you going to say after that?
well, that's what I was going to allude to, because I recall now that in the early 70s, when this occurrence happened, that there were several sightings of crafts above bodies of water and apparently sucking up water.
Yeah. And these other children who were with you later on in life, did you talk with them, or and have did they remember or get triggers about what they saw?
Well, my brother remembers the occurrence and everybody getting scared, and he remembers he was a couple of years older than me. So he remembers having to walk up to the hill to look at the pond. That he remembers that, but the specifics he doesn't remember.
And did any of the kids draw any pictures about what happened?
No, but it was discussed amongst the parents, which I learned later, that all of the parents were having the same challenge, that the children were afraid of the pond.
Wow. Now, later on, we had talked before about you being in the Navy. Uh, what do you think about what you saw? I mean, you know a lot about ships and things like that, obviously, especially water. Did you see anything else while you were in the Navy that was strange or
Uh,
paranormal?
Absolutely. And I'll share that one also. So one of my best friends was a singleman. So he lived on the, or his description of his job was singling other ships, either by semaphore, Morse code, or flags. And they also were part of this search, and they would sit out there with binoculars and scanning the horizon. So when I was off duty, I went to go visit him, and he had a few things he had to wrap up before we were going to go to mess hall. And so we're out there hanging out. He's doing his whatever with the flags. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking over the horizon. And then from left to right, this thing goes zipping by. And then all of a sudden, I turn to him and he's looking too. And we looked at each other and we're just like, what?
Right? Like, did you
So,
just do that?
exactly. So then
Yeah.
we went to the signal shack, and my senior chief petty officer was in there talking to the other chief petty officer.
Right.
And it must have been obvious by the expression on our face when we walked in that something was up. And then we stood there both like pondering who's going to say something first. So I eventually spoke up and I shared the experience of what just happened. So then the senior chief put his hand up, put a finger up like to shush us, and he turned down the speaker and turned it up. And the speaker system was all of the people that are on watch,
Okay.
so they would relay information while on watch. And so nobody's talking or squawking about what we saw. And so then the senior chief says, "This is your choice. You can make a report, and we'll take the report and we'll submit the report, and it'll be passed down the chain of command. And then when we get back into port, someone might come on board and question what you saw. And then you might, I cannot confirm or deny that you may or may not be told what you saw and what it is that you saw. Or since nobody else is squawking about it, you can take it as an experience the both of you had while on the sea and share it with your grandchildren." And so we we decided to retain the information amongst ourselves because it was beyond any description of what I could have shared.
That's so unfortunate that this happens so often with, um, you know, shall we say, government or military when they're downplayed and told what to do, and that's so sad that they can't really share it.
I agree, and it's interesting, a little bit more has been divulged to the citizens or the peoples of the world of these occurrences, but still, I'm still on the fence. Nothing surprises me anymore. And I know when I asked an elder about extraterrestrials, they said, "What about them?" And they confirmed that we have relatives in the stars from the heavens.
Well, yeah, for what I understand, indigenous First Nations, that's in your history, your oral history. So it's so sad that we can't share that. It's getting a little bit better, it seems like. But have you talked about any of your friends from um, the military since you retired?
Oh no, I it's been 36,
Been a while, hey.
36 years ago now.
Yeah, yeah. So you've experienced a lot of different phenomena.
Right, 32. Sorry, doing the math in my head, but it's been a while.
Yeah. And how do you feel now after actually seeing those? Does it more like a tic tac thing? Remember that they released? Was it kind of like that? What you saw?
No, it was more of a streak of light that went so fast that it was just like a zip. And it was, yeah, there was
And
like no definition to it because it went so fast.
and it wouldn't have been like a shooting star or things like that,
No,
right?
it was lower in the horizon than more like your angle of
Right.
being 90 degrees. It
Right. And you
was
would have known, being that you were out on the water all the time at night, you would have known the difference in the stars and what you saw.
correct, but also doing plane spotting where our ship would follow the aircraft carrier. I've been accustomed to identifying or knowing the difference between our aircraft and things that aren't normal as far as aircraft go.
Okay, yeah. I think you had mentioned also off air something about Anukai and types of aliens.
I'm sorry if you could say that one more.
Did we talk off air before about the Anukai and different like types of aliens? Did you talk about that, or did you want to talk about that?
Um, well, that is one of the explanations I was given, from what most people talk within the UFO community. I've heard there's over 34 different types of entities, extraterrestrials, that have been, described. And this has been the same with the elders, where they discuss, they talk about the different types, that there's humanoid and then there's like the reptilian or the insectoid, and the such. If we just look at the heavens and the stars and the feasibility or possibility that each star has a solar system and planets, to think that we're alone. Mulder said it best: I want to believe.
Yes.
And we talk about life as we know it. Just because life, may not always be Homo sapiens sapien. Who's to know if there's not like if you think of Carlos Diaz and his plasma ships, where they're more like light ships. Who's
Yes.
to say there's not like light entities, but then you go through all of the experiences that have been shared by the tens of thousands of people that have experienced these things. Where do you go within the full spectrum of what?
That's right. A lot of people are experiencing all kinds of things. Now, I think, we talked a lot about different kinds of things and logos. And um, I think, was there something that you wanted to talk about, seventh fire prophecy or something?
Oh yeah,
Or,
yeah, we can go into that because it kind of comes around full circle. So uh, the individual that I bring up all the time is Immanuel Velikovsky. He has two great works: Worlds in Collision and Ages in Chaos. And this individual went around the world and talked to all these different indigenous peoples and found out that there were many different stories or legends or things that were passed down about Mother Earth going through major cataclysmic changes.
okay.
So
I
one
think
of
we're going through that now, aren't we?
oh, definitely something
Mhm.
is happening, but
Something.
change is inevitable. And when we recognize the patterns, then we can make a better assumption or guess of what's coming around the bend. But there's always an anomaly or an exception to the rule. No scientific absolute. So the Anishinaabe people, we have what's called the seventh fire prophecy. Some claim it's eight, but that's still up to debate. So
Oh,
it means that seven or eight times in the passed down history of the Anishinaabe, they saw Mother Earth go through cataclysmic events, which were almost extinction level events
wow.
on the North American continent.
Okay.
So through checking out, um, have you ever heard of the Serpent Mound in the Ohio River Valley?
Yes, I have.
So that is a calendar, the largest snake effigy in the world,
Isn't
where,
that related to Mayan, or I'm trying to think about what culture?
well, this goes back into the argument of history and his story. I have proclaimed that my ancestors have been on the North American continent over 70,000 years, and they were the ones that were considered the mound builders, or
Okay.
also those that built the Serpent Mound.
Wow.
Through my research, prior to 1300, the totality of the East or the territory east of the Mississippi River were the territory of the Anishinaabe people,
Okay.
the entirety of North America. Interesting enough, being on the precipice of Thanksgiving, there was no accident that the border between Canada and the United States was almost perfectly dividing the Anishinaabe discussed territory from the Iroquois Confederacy and the treaty of the such. And so the distinguishing what was what prior to his story and history, again, is a very difficult challenge reading between the line,
Right.
because going to university and reading all the literature pertaining my ancestors, there's several contradictions to the teaching orally by the elders. We have what's called the Meday Lodge, and they are the keepers of the history. They're the ones that continue to read the birch bark scrolls and share in the lodge those teachings, which is a membership thing, but anyone can join the Meday Lodge. So it's not like a
Okay.
secret society, it's just a society of those to retain the history of the people.
Retain the knowledge. Yes.
Correct. Yeah. So the Serpent Mound as a calendar was utilized to measure the shadow of the sun and the shadow of the moon
Right.
at certain times of the year. And by that shadow falling upon the curve of the snake, when the alignment was witnessed, they would pay attention to the heavens, because it would mean we're on the precipice of the fire prophecy.
Okay.
So going back to Immanuel Velikovsky, there is a common around the world of what people call Nibiru, wormwood, the red
Yes.
dragon, the blue
Planet
kachina,
X. Yeah.
planet X, the Hopi
They say it's.
prophecy, the
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So all of that is different titles, the semantics, But the fact of the matter is that a critical point, something happens on Mother Earth, which is beyond the normalcy. Apocalypse only means the great revealing, and that revealing may have a major effect on the progression of your existence. And so there is discussion within the Anishinaabe people that we are on the precipice of that seventh fire prophecy.
Oh,
Uh,
I hope not.
so, fortunately or unfortunately, we can't, well, not myself, but I don't have the ability to talk to the Pugwaji, or the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot, where they're not sharing with us all of this information anymore. I think we've manipulated their living quarters more than they care. So I think they've turned their backs on us.
Yes, I heard there was a point in time where we could talk to them, the
Oh,
hairy men.
absolutely. Yes.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now we're getting up on the 50-minute mark. We got about 10 minutes left. I think you also wanted to mention about the cannabis resolution.
Oh, well, I just have proclaimed that cannabis, could this incredible plant save the world? Yes, it cannabis. Pull the weeds of ignorance, plant the seeds of truth, and harvest a better tomorrow. And through my experience, utilizing cannabis for optimal health and pain management, I've been very successful, especially with staying away from the synthetic opioids that the VA wants me to consume. So, with the millions of byproducts that could be made from the cultivation of cannabis, I'm very supportive. I actually was one of the original cannabis commissioners on my reservation. about growing cannabis for the benefit of the people, not just for smoking, not for just ingesting, but for the industrial aspects as well as the health maintenance.
Yes, yeah, there are several different aspects of it. I mean, even just using the hemp for skin and things like that. And then you've got the CBD that doesn't affect you, it just helps for pain, and CBG for pain. And
Right.
you don't even have to have the THC. You can just have that and not worry about the hallucinogenic stuff, right? Like you
Well,
said.
that's where the challenge I have, because what I call the powers that should not be, that they have manipulated the cannabis plant and they split it in half to call it hemp and marijuana so they can make twice as much profit from this incredible plant.
Right. I know in Canada that cannabis is legal, but in most places in the United States, I don't believe it is. There's only a couple states and you have to have a special permit even just to use it, don't you?
I agree. And it is frustrating when the plant never should have been demonized and it never should have been put in a category that it was.
That's a whole nother podcast in itself, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing about your First Nation heritage and your history and your paranormal experiences and very in-depth conversation. We could have went on in greater depth into the seventh fire prophecy. I find that very interesting.
Well, absolutely. And I hope we can share precious moments again sooner than later, because it has been a pleasure and an honor. Any opportunity where I can share about the history of my ancestors, I will be there with a smile, or at least attempting to bring a giggle.
And we have to give a shout out to where I met you with Brent Thomas, and he was on PNL Podcast Season 2, Episode 129, and Season 3, Episode 36. And yeah, so we definitely have to give a shout out to Brent Thomas from Paranormal Portal. And you were on his podcast a few times.
Oh, absolutely. I've known Brent for 9 years now, I think it is. And I think
Yeah.
I was there on his very first or second podcast he ever did.
And were
With,
you also a co-host on Truth Frequency Network with the Phoenix Rising Show and Freaky Friday with the Woo Crew?
yeah, that's correct. Many years of that. I was, for 3 years, I was a co host on Phoenix Rising, and then almost 4 years on Fridays with Kev Baker.
Yes, I was just going to mention the KBS Kevin Baker Show. So yeah, and even with your blindness, that you always naysay enjoys saving the universe one giggle at a time. I love
Correct.
that you put humor into it. I mean, without humor, what have we got, right?
Absolutely. And if for one precious moment I can have somebody giggle, then for that precious moment there was positivity. And if more people would try to find the positivity and transmute the negativity or minimally neutralize it, and if you need any assistance, let me know. For $19.99, I will be your many sins man. Extra charge for drum and rattle, and there's a $2,000 deposit for Canadians.
Oh, you're funny. So listen, for people who want to get a hold of you for any podcasts and talk a little bit more about, First Nations and Aanishanaabeg, did you want to give out your email, or is there some other way that you want them to contact you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter or X now. Sorry. Yeah. When I'm trying to be funny, I am hilarious Nese, just like hilarious, but HIGH, hilarious Nese, NESE. Or you can also find me as the Megaphone Man, and that's on YouTube, and that's on Instagram, and also on X. themegaphoneman, one word, at themegaphoneman. And also that's my Gmail. So if you wish to share information or have any questions, if I can help you find the answer, then I'm serving a greater good.
So everybody follow Nese on all of his social media platforms and reach out to him on those ones that we had mentioned, the Megaphone Man. And thank you again so much for being on the show. And I wish everybody listening a very happy Canadian Thanksgiving. So we're going to leave the show with a little bit of bog team music, boots on the ground music. I guess we can put some rock or metal or rap. What would you like to listen to? Or I think I even have country.
Well, I just want to say, A Pegish Minobima Deziwe Wion, which translate, may we have the life that we deserve. And any type of Native American powwow music or flute music, or I'd have to say Robbie Robertson is one of my favorites.
Nice. I can definitely think about those for your TikTok and your Instagram teaser. But for now, we're going to leave with some bog team music. I'll put some folk music on from Newfoundland and the Labrador. You're listening in on UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 FM on that Ghost, the Paranormal NL podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. Let me go ahead and that music.
Toodles.
Toodles. Don't hang up yet. We'll do a quick off-air chat, Nese. They bravely tread the boots on the ground team in the land of the living where hope is sown. Their courage and faith like a beacon shone. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Guided by love, their spirits unbowed.